Funny, isn't it? How a man can spend his whole life working, day in, day out, and still have nothing to show for it. How he can break his back, give up his youth, miss birthdays, skip dinners, bite his tongue, and still fall short when the bills come in. You've seen it too, haven't you? The man who wakes before dawn, drives the same old road, clocks in, keeps his head down, does what he's told, and yet, when the rent's due, when the tire bursts, when the kid gets sick, he's got no cushion to land on, not because he's lazy, not because he wasted his life, but because he spent it doing the kind of work that never lets a man get ahead. They call it hard work, but I've learned not all hard work is equal. There's poor people's work, and there's rich people's work, and the two don't pay the same, not in money, and not in freedom. Now before you shut me out, thinking I'm looking down on honest labor, hear me clearly. There is dignity in every kind of work, but dignity won't pay your power bill. You can be proud of your effort, but still be exhausted and broke. You can pour your soul into a job and still walk away empty-handed. You see, poor people's work isn't about the job title. It's about the trap it puts you in. Work that demands your time but never grows your value. Work that burns your body but never builds your future. I've seen strong men dig ditches, lay bricks, clean floors, hour after hour, day after day, year after year, and still die with debts in their name. And I've seen quiet men sit behind desks, tap on keys, sign papers, make phone calls, and build lives that stretch far beyond their own. What's the difference? Not intelligence, not effort, not even luck, but leverage. Poor people's work uses you up. Rich people's work builds something that keeps working, even when you stop. That's the part no one tells you when you're young. They just say, work hard, be grateful, keep your head down. But they never say, choose the kind of work that grows, find a skill that scales, stop trading time for crumbs. Because they didn't know either. They were stuck in the same pattern, passed down like an old jacket, worn out, but familiar, and you put it on too. Because it was the only one you saw. You believed if you just worked harder, stayed longer, showed up more, that life would reward you, but it doesn't work that way. The world doesn't pay you based on how hard you work. It pays you based on how hard you are to replace. And the truth is, the harder the job is on your body, the less it usually pays your bank. Strange, isn't it? The ones sweating under the sun get less than the ones sitting in air-conditioned rooms. The ones breaking their backs earn less than the ones moving numbers with their fingers. It's not fair, but it's real, and if you don't face that, you'll keep chasing worth in a world that doesn't pay you for wear and tear. Now, I'm not saying you should quit your job tomorrow. I'm not saying you're foolish for working hard. I'm saying you've got to start noticing where your effort goes. Because work is like water. It can either turn a wheel or sink a ship. It depends on where you pour it, and most folks, they're pouring all their effort into work that drains them, not work that builds them. They give 40, 50, 60 hours a week to someone else's dream and spend the last sliver of their day too tired to think about their own. That's poor people's work, not because you're poor, but because the work keeps you that way. It keeps your eyes down, your mind busy, your time consumed. So you don't stop long enough to ask the question, is this work building a future for me or just keeping me alive? That's the question, isn't it? You wake up, you repeat the same day, you go to sleep just in time to start again, and it feels noble, because it's hard, because it's consistent, because you're doing what's expected. But sometimes what's expected is exactly what keeps you stuck. You think, if I just hang on, maybe it gets better. But let me tell you something. From one old soul to another. Poor people's work never gets better. It just gets heavier. The longer you carry it, the more your spirit starts to sag. The longer you wait, the less energy you have left to change direction. So no, this isn't about shaming your hustle. It's about awakening your mind. Because hard work isn't the problem. It's where you're pointing it that matters. And if no one ever told you that, well, now someone has. We'll talk more about it next time. There's more to this than what you've been told, much more. But for now, just let this truth settle in. You're not poor because you don't work. You're poor because of the kind of work you're doing. Let that echo for a while. Let it sting if it needs to. But don't turn away from it. Because buried in that sting is the beginning of something new, something better. We'll sit with that a while. And when you're ready, we'll keep going. Together, like always, quietly, but clearly, into the truth. So let's sit with that thought a moment longer, not to rush past it, not to smooth it over, but to really feel what it's saying. Because I know it doesn't feel good. It's not a truth that pats you on the back. It's one that stirs. Something deeper, something uncomfortable. You've worked your whole life. You've done what was asked. And still, you feel like you're standing in place, still behind on rent, still one bad week away from everything falling apart. And now, someone tells you the very work you've been proud of, the work you've sacrificed for, might be the very thing holding you down. That's not easy to hear. But sometimes the truth shows up not to comfort you, but to set you free. And the truth is this: not all work leads to freedom. Some work is just a cage with a time card. A routine that keeps you tired enough not to rebel, busy enough not to think, and hopeful enough to stay quiet. It gives you just enough to survive, but never enough to leave. And you tell yourself, this is just temporary. This is just for now. But just for now has a way of becoming decades, has a way of becoming your whole life. I've seen men wake up at 60 and realize they gave the best years of their life to a job that barely remembers their name. They gave loyalty to a system that never once gave them ownership. And you wonder why you're still broke? It's not because you lack character. It's not because you lack discipline. It's because no one ever taught you the difference between labor and leverage. You see, labor takes your time and gives you money. Leverage takes your mind and gives you freedom. Poor people's work is almost always labor. More hours, more sacrifice. But it's tied to your presence. It needs your body to function. The moment you stop moving, the money stops coming. Now I want you to think about something. Just imagine what happens if you get hurt, if you get sick, if something takes you out of the picture for a week, a month, a year. If your income disappears the moment you disappear, you're not building wealth, you're just running in place. And the system knows that. That's why it pushes you toward jobs that need your hands, but not your head. Jobs that exhaust your energy so you never use it to ask deeper questions. Because the moment you start asking, you start seeing, and when you start seeing, you stop settling. But asking is dangerous in a world that depends on your silence. You see it, don't you? The ones who ask, how can I own this instead of work for it? How can I build something that works even when I sleep? How can I make my money move, not just sit still? Those are the ones the world calls foolish, until they succeed. Because they dared to step off the path, to leave the known road of poor people's work, and start walking toward something uncertain, but powerful. Now maybe you're thinking, but I've got kids. But I've got bills. I don't have the luxury to experiment. And I hear that, I truly do. But let me tell you, staying stuck isn't safe either. The illusion is that this kind of work is stable, but it's only stable as long as you're useful, And the moment you slow down, the world moves on. That's the silent agreement of poor people's work. You give everything. And in return, you get just enough to keep giving, but never enough to stop, never enough to breathe, never enough to grow. So if you can't leave today, at least let yourself start looking. Look at your hands, ask yourself, is this the best use of me? Is this the highest return on my effort? Because you don't need $1 million idea. You just need a shift, a small realignment of direction, a different question, a new skill, a bit of courage to break the rhythm. You see, poor people's work is also a kind of sleep, a deep, slow hypnosis. You stop dreaming, you stop planning, you just start surviving. And after a while, surviving feels normal. You stop noticing the cage, because everyone around you is in one too. But I'm telling you now, you were not born to survive. You were not meant to live just to pay bills and disappear. There is more in you than this pattern. There is more in you than this paycheck. There is more in you than the label of worker when you were born to be a builder. So stop asking, how do I make this work? And start asking, is this the kind of work I want to make? There's a world of difference between the two. We'll talk more next time about the kind of work that lifts you instead of drains you, the kind of work that multiplies instead of diminishes. But for now, just promise yourself you'll start paying attention, not to how hard you're working, but to what your work is building, because that's the part no one told you. Some work makes you tired, other work makes you free. The trick is learning which is which, and that lesson can change everything. So where were we? Yes, the kind of work that makes you tired and the kind that makes you free. That difference. It's quiet, but it changes the whole rhythm of your life. You can feel it in your chest, in the way you breathe when you come home, in the way your soul whispers when the house is quiet. Poor people's work takes more than your hours. It takes your attention, leaves nothing left over for vision, for learning, for planting seeds. And maybe you've noticed it too. You get home late. Your back aches. You sit down with your meal, and your mind is too dull to dream. Not because you're broken, but because the work is draining you dry. It's not that your dreams are gone. It's just that your energy is spoken for, every day, every hour, already promised to someone else's goal. And over time, you begin to forget what freedom even looks like. That's the danger of certain kinds of labor. It numbs you gently. It tells you, you've done enough. Just rest now. Don't ask for more, and you listen. Because you're tired, because it feels true. But deep down, there's still a part of you that knows. This isn't how it's supposed to be. You weren't made to wear your body out just to survive. You weren't meant to give the world your strength and get crumbs in return. No, there's another kind of work, but it starts with a shift in thinking. You have to stop asking, how can I make more money doing this? And start asking, is this even worth doing at all? Because here's the secret most poor people never get told. Rich people don't work harder. They work smarter at the right things. They build machines, businesses, systems, assets. Things that produce money without requiring their constant presence. While poor people's work demands sweat, rich people's work demands thought. While poor people's work ends when the shift is over, rich people's work continues while they sleep. Now that may sound far away from where you are. Maybe you think that kind of life is only for the lucky, the educated, the connected. But listen to me. Every person who broke free started exactly where you are, confused, unsure, scared. But they asked a new question, and that question opened a door. Sometimes it wasn't a big door. Maybe it was just a small side gig. A craft they learned in the evenings. a service they offered in their neighborhood, a habit they built over time, but it grew because they stopped pouring all their effort into buckets with holes. They stopped trying to work harder at broken systems and started stepping outside of them. You can too, not overnight, not without cost, but slowly, deliberately, wisely. You can begin building something, even while you still show up to the job that pays your bills. You can begin teaching yourself skills that scale, learning how money works, understanding value creation, thinking like an owner, not just a worker. Because here's another hard truth. The longer you stay in poor people's work, the harder it becomes to leave, not because you can't, but because you get used to the rhythm. You start mistaking exhaustion for effort. You start believing struggle means you're doing something right. But struggle, on its own, is not a sign of progress. If you're struggling just to stand still, you're not climbing, you're sinking. You need a new kind of struggle, a meaningful one. The kind that builds muscle, not just calluses. The kind of challenge that leads somewhere better, not just deeper into the same pattern. And I'm not saying it's easy, I'm saying it's worth it. Because when you start doing work that has leverage, your time becomes powerful again. 1 hour of focused effort can produce results for weeks, months, even years. One decision. To learn a trade, to start a business, to invest in a skill, can echo for the rest of your life. But you have to begin seeing your work differently. You're not just exchanging time for money, you're shaping your future. Every hour you give to poor people's work is an hour you're not giving to something that grows. And time, my friend, is not something you can earn back. So take your time seriously, guard it, spend it wisely. Ask yourself, not once, but every day, is this work making me better or just keeping me busy? If it's just keeping you busy, you already know the answer. Now some people will tell you, just be grateful you have a job. And yes, gratitude matters, but gratitude should never be a cage. You can be grateful and still want better. You can appreciate your present and still reach for more. In fact, that's the most honest kind of gratitude, because it honors the gift of your life by refusing to waste it. So no, you don't need to quit tomorrow. You don't need to burn everything down. You just need to begin the quiet shift from labor to leverage, from survival to strategy, from poor people's work to work that frees you. We'll talk more next time about what that shift really looks like, where to look, what to build, how to start walking out of the fog. But for now, I just want you to see the choice you've always had. The world told you your work was all you could do, but the world was wrong. You can choose again. You can build again. You can rise again, quietly, slowly, deliberately, one small shift at a time. So then, what does that shift really look like? What does it mean to move from labor to leverage, from doing poor people's work to building something that frees you? Because I know what you might be thinking. It sounds good in theory, but how does someone like me actually do it? And that's a fair question. You've spent years walking one road, and now someone's telling you there's another path, but it's hidden under brush, quiet, unmarked, no guideposts, no guarantees. That's enough to make any man hesitate, especially when he's got mouths to feed, debts to pay, and not a lot of room to fail. But here's what you need to understand first. The shift isn't a single leap. It's a quiet series of decisions, done in the shadows, while the world isn't looking. It's not a grand announcement, not a dramatic exit. It's small things, done consistently, with eyes open and mind engaged. You wake up 10 minutes earlier, not to rush, but to read, to study, to stretch the part of your mind that's been asleep for years. You take a look at the work you do each day, and you ask, what part of this is just movement? What part of this could I automate? outsource, or eliminate. You begin to notice where your energy goes, not just your time, but your focus, your attention, your best hours. And you begin reclaiming some of them, not all at once, just a little at a time. You stop watching what doesn't grow you. You stop wasting the last good hour of your evening on distraction and numbness. Because here's the truth. You're tired, yes, but some of that tiredness comes from meaninglessness, not just exertion. Poor people's work wears you down. Not just because it's hard, but because it doesn't lead anywhere. And the soul gets weary when the path is circular. So you begin to ask a better question. What work could I do that increases in value over time? That's the question most people never ask. They think only in terms of paychecks, not momentum. They ask, how much does it pay? But never, what does it become? Poor people's work resets every Monday, no matter how hard you worked the week before. But leverage builds, a book written once that sells forever, a skill learned deeply that others will pay for again. And again, a business that runs even when you rest, a piece of land that grows in value without lifting a finger. Now maybe you're not there yet, and that's okay. This is not about shame. It's about seeing the direction you want to move in. And the first step is simple. You start treating your time as if it matters more than your wage, because it does. You can always make more money, but you will never make more time. So ask yourself, is this job giving me money, or is it giving me skills I can carry with me? Is this work making me harder to replace, or just better at obeying instructions? Because if your job only teaches you how to be obedient, how to be silent, how to survive, then it's not training you for freedom. It's training you to stay where you are. But if your work teaches you how to solve problems, how to lead people, how to think clearly, how to sell, how to create, then you're learning tools that can go with you wherever you go. That's the kind of work that begins to shift the tide. And sometimes, the shift starts outside the job. You learn after hours. You take a free course. You apprentice under someone you trust. You watch how the game is really played. Not just how it's talked about on TV. And no, it doesn't happen overnight. But you're not aiming for fast. You're aiming for real. You're not building a lottery ticket. You're planting a tree, slow roots, solid growth. A future that can weather storms. See, the rich don't just make money. They build structures that protect it, multiply it, and outlive them. And poor people, not because they're less intelligent, but because they were never taught. Spend a lifetime making money that vanishes the moment it's earned. You've felt that, haven't you? You get paid Friday, you're broke by Monday, not because you're irresponsible, but because you're trapped in a system where every dollar already has a destination. That's what poor people's work does. It gives just enough to keep you dependent. Never enough to make you dangerous. But once you begin learning how money works, how value works, how systems work, you become something else entirely. You become someone the system can't control, because you no longer need it in the same way. You become someone who doesn't just survive, you design. You don't wait for permission. You build your own doors and walk through them on your terms. But first, you have to believe your effort deserves more than exhaustion. You have to believe your mind was meant for more than just following orders. You have to believe that hard work is only half the story, and the other half is where that work is pointed. And if you're still listening, still nodding quietly, still letting this truth sink into your bones, then you're already further ahead than most. You've already stepped out of the fog. Even if just by an inch, we'll keep walking. Slowly, clearly, together, there's more to see and more to build. But for now, just let yourself believe one quiet thing. You don't have to stay where you are. No matter how long you've been there, you can move, you can shift. You can rise, and you will just not by doing more of the same work, but by doing a new kind of work, a wiser kind. We'll talk more next time about where that path begins. So where does that path begin? Not the one they sell in books with glossy covers, not the one with a countdown timer and a promised six-figure shortcut. I'm talking about the real path, the one that starts small, quiet, honest, the one that doesn't make noise but makes change. It begins here with awareness, with the decision to stop sleepwalking through your own life. Because poor people's work has a rhythm, a repetition, a kind of hypnosis. You wake up, you move your body to the same place, you do the same tasks, you say the same things, and when the day ends, you don't feel any closer to anything new. It's a cycle disguised as a life, and you begin to confuse motion with progress. But once you become aware, truly aware, you start noticing the difference. You begin to feel the cost, not just in your back and feet, but in your mind, in your spirit. The days don't just tire you. They steal you slowly, quietly, like sand slipping through your fingers, and you start asking questions that aren't polite, questions your coworkers don't ask, questions that make you feel a little strange, a little alone. Why am I still broke after all these years? Why am I exhausted, but not advancing? Why do I feel like I'm always behind, even when I'm doing everything right? Those questions matter. They're the cracks in the wall, the first signs that something isn't right. And if you listen to them, instead of running from them, they'll lead you to a new way of living. Now here's something I want you to remember. The path doesn't begin with opportunity. It begins with responsibility. Not the kind you've been taught, where you carry everyone else's load, where you feel guilty for wanting more, where you confuse sacrifice with virtue. I'm talking about the quiet responsibility of owning your life, looking at your situation, no matter how hard, no matter how unfair, and saying, I didn't choose all of this, but I choose what happens next. That's when something shifts. Not outside you, but inside. You stop blaming the job. You stop blaming the boss. You stop blaming the economy, not because they're innocent, but because they're not the ones who get to write your story. You do, and that's when the work begins. Not the kind you clock in for, not the kind that drains you, but the kind that builds you. The quiet work of learning, of unlearning, of training your mind to think like an owner, not just a worker. See, poor people's work teaches obedience. Rich people's work demands vision, and vision takes practice. It means learning to look at problems and ask, how can I solve this at scale? How can I build a solution that lives beyond me? It means shifting from, how can I earn more, to, how can I create more value? And I know that language may sound strange, too abstract, too distant from the life you've known. But you don't have to master it all at once. You just start small. You notice where people struggle. You pay attention to your own frustrations. You begin to see patterns, and then you start thinking in terms of solutions. That's where wealth begins, not in dollars, but in perspective, because once you can see value, you can start to build it, offer it, exchange it, not just your time, but your ideas, your insight, your impact, and slowly, you begin to move out of poor people's work, even while you're still working the same job. Because something in you has changed. You're no longer doing it just to survive. You're doing it while building something beyond it. And yes, that season is hard. You'll be tired. You'll be tempted to go back to sleep, to return to the comfort of numbness, but stay with it, because eventually the momentum will shift. You'll start making more from the work you own than the work you rent yourself out to. And one day, you'll realize you don't need that job anymore, not because you hate it, but because you outgrew it. You did the real work, the work of becoming someone who builds instead of obeys, who creates instead of trades hours, who leads instead of waits. That kind of freedom. No one gives it to you. You earn it through clarity, through discipline, through daring to live outside the script. And that path? It's always been there, right next to the one you've been walking all along, covered in dust, unmarked, but waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to choose. So no, this shift doesn't begin with opportunity falling in your lap. It begins when you decide you're no longer okay with being exhausted and empty. It begins the day you say, I want my effort to mean something more than survival. We'll talk next time about how people stay trapped, even when they know the truth, even when they've started the shift, because knowing isn't always enough. There are other forces at play, emotional, invisible, ancestral, but we'll get there. One quiet conversation at a time. You're already further than you think. Keep going. Let's talk about the trap, the silent one, the one nobody warns you about. Because here's the truth. Even once you realize you're doing poor people's work, even after the awareness hits you like a wave, many people stay exactly where they are. Not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, but because the old world is familiar. It's predictable. And sometimes staying stuck is safer than stepping into the unknown. See, the most dangerous prison isn't made of walls or barbed wire. It's made of patterns, old beliefs, emotional debts, and invisible rules you never agreed to, but follow anyway. You may already feel it. That voice inside that says, don't aim too high. You'll only be disappointed. Be grateful for what you have. People have it worse. You're not special enough to build something better. That's not your wisdom talking. That's survival mode. Passed down, reinforced, normalized. It's the voice of generations who were trained to shrink. And it's very hard to build a life of abundance when your inner wiring is still programmed for scarcity. That's why so many people who know they're doing poor people's work stay in it. They can describe the cage in perfect detail, but they still grip the bars. Because when you've worked hard your whole life just to survive, the idea of building something new feels indulgent, risky, even selfish. You start thinking, what if I fail? What if I lose everything? What will my family say if I try to break the mold? Let me tell you something, plain and simple. Poor people's work is more than just a job. It's an identity. And walking away from it isn't just a career move. It's a spiritual transformation. You are not just changing what you do. You're changing how you see yourself. That's the real work. And that's why the shift is so hard. Because the moment you try to build a business, learn a new skill, raise your prices, invest in yourself, you're not just facing external problems. You're facing internal resistance. You're stepping into territory you're nervous system isn't used to. You're saying, I am worth more. And that can feel dangerous, especially if you were raised to be obedient, quiet, and useful. Let me ask you this. Have you ever lowered your standards to stay comfortable? Ever said yes when you meant no, just to keep the peace? Ever told yourself you're not ready yet, even though part of you was screaming to grow? That's not laziness. That's conditioning. You've been trained, subtly and repeatedly, to trade your power for security. And the saddest part? Most people will spend their entire lives in that trade, until their body breaks down, their spirit dries up, and they pass that same script onto their children. But you've started to ask questions. And that matters, because the trap only works if you stay unconscious. Once you wake up, you can't unsee the truth. You start to notice how systems are designed to keep people busy but poor. How workplaces reward loyalty but not ownership. How the hardest working people are often the most replaceable, and it hurts. It stings, but that pain, that's your soul saying, there's more. There's more for you. You didn't come here just to survive. So now what? Do you burn it all down? Quit your job tomorrow? Move to Bali and start a drop-shipping empire? No, that's just another form of panic dressed up as freedom. Real change doesn't come from impulsive escape. It comes from strategic elevation. You don't have to destroy the old to build the new. You can build while you're still inside the old system. That's what most people miss. They think freedom means a dramatic exit. But often, it means a quiet commitment, a few hours, a day working on something that belongs to you. It means saving when everyone else is spending, studying when everyone else is scrolling, saying no when people expect you to say yes. It means being misunderstood for a while. But here's the gift. One day, the work you do on the side becomes the work you do full-time. And that's the moment the system loses its grip on you, not because it changed, but because you did. And now you see the world differently. You stop chasing job titles and start building value. You stop begging for raises and start raising your standards. You stop asking, who will hire me? And start asking, who can I serve? And eventually, you look back and realize, you didn't just escape poor people's work. You outgrew it, because here's the thing about transformation. It's not about adding more. It's about removing what never belonged to you. The doubt, the guilt, the fear of being too much. None of that was ever yours to carry. So let me leave you with this. You're not crazy for wanting more. You're not greedy for seeking freedom. You're not selfish for dreaming of a life where your energy creates legacy, not just wages. You're just waking up. And once you wake up, you can never go back to sleep. Stay awake. We'll go further next time. So, you've woken up. You've looked around at the work you do, not just what's on your job description, but what it means. And you've started to realize you've been trading your time, your sweat, your energy for something that doesn't grow, something that doesn't build, something that doesn't move you closer to freedom. And now, a new question is rising. What then is rich people's work? It's a fair question. If you've been stuck doing the kind of labor that keeps you surviving day after day, but never building wealth, then what does the other side actually look like? Let's strip away the fluff. Rich people's work isn't about wearing suits, owning yachts, or giving TED Talks in glass buildings. It's simpler than that. Rich people's work is anything that builds leverage. Let me say that again, slowly. Leverage. If you don't understand that word, you'll stay poor, no matter how smart or hardworking you are, because poor people's work uses time. But rich people's work uses systems. Poor people's work asks, how many hours can I put in? Rich people's work asks, how can I build something that works without me? Big difference. Let me give you a picture. A janitor works 10 hours a day cleaning floors. He earns $100. A course creator spends 100 hours once building a valuable training, and then sells it 10,000 times. The janitor worked harder, but the course creator worked smarter. Which one has leverage? Exactly. This is why many poor people resent the rich, because from the outside, it looks like they're doing less. But the truth is, they did the invisible work up front. They built systems. They built trust. They built value that scales. That's rich people's work. Let's get even clearer. There are three basic forms of leverage. Labor, getting other people to work with you, capital, using money to make more money, code. And content, creating things that scale infinitely, like software or media. Most poor people rely only on their own labor. They don't own capital. They don't produce scalable content. And they don't lead systems. They stay in roles where the moment they stop showing up, the money stops too. That's a trap. Because eventually, your energy fades, your body wears out, and you're left with nothing but memories of how hard you worked. But no wealth, no freedom, no legacy. It doesn't have to be that way. Now hear me carefully. This isn't about quitting your job and becoming a tech founder. It's not about shaming honest labor. It's about graduating from survival mode and entering the game of wealth-building. So how do you start? You start small. You start now. You look at your current skills and ask, can I package this? Can I teach this? Can I digitize this? Can I scale this? If you're good at explaining things, make a video. If you've got a solution people always ask you about, turn it into a mini course. If you're fixing the same problem again and again, write an ebook or build a tool. This is how it begins, not with noise and fame, but with quiet creation, with one product, one offer, one system that earns while you sleep. And once you've done it once, you do it again, and again, until one day, your income no longer depends on your presence. And that's when you've stepped into rich people's work. Let me warn you, this path demands patience. It's not glamorous in the beginning. No one applauds your late nights. No one celebrates your early drafts. There are no guaranteed paydays. Just faith and quiet effort. But if you stay with it, if you build something that works without you, you'll start to feel it, the shift from worker to builder. From employee to creator. From being paid once for your time to being paid forever for your thinking. Now maybe you're wondering, but I don't have time to do all that. I'm already working so much. Let me tell you something. That might sting. You'll never find the time. You have to make it. Not because it's easy, but because staying where you are is harder. Wasting the next 10 years working poor people's jobs, watching the clock, waiting for a promotion that never comes. That's harder. The discomfort of growth is real. But so is the pain of regret. Only one of those leads to freedom. So no, you don't have to be a genius. You don't need to be born rich. You just need to understand this. Wealth doesn't come from how hard you work. It comes from how smart you set things up. And when you begin to build with leverage in mind, slowly, quietly, deliberately, you'll no longer be just working hard. You'll be working right. That's rich people's work. And it's waiting for you. Are you ready to begin? So, now that you know what rich people's work actually is, and you understand that it's rooted in leverage, not labor, a new challenge appears, your identity. Because let me tell you something, knowing is not enough. Even doing is not enough if deep down, you still see yourself as someone who only deserves to earn from sweat. That's one of poverty's most dangerous beliefs. The idea that you must suffer to earn. That money must be hard to deserve. That ease equals guilt. That leverage equals laziness. Where do you think that idea comes from? It's inherited, passed down from generations who had no choice, who had to break their backs just to survive. Who were told, if you're not exhausted, you're not working. And so you grew up associating effort with value. You learned to be proud of your struggle and to feel ashamed of anything that looked too easy. So now, when you start moving toward leveraged work, when money starts to come in from a system, not from your exhaustion, you feel something strange, guilt. You feel like you've cheated. You worry that someone's going to call you out. You wonder if you're really working hard enough. That's the psychological prison. That's what keeps so many brilliant CAPLE people stuck in low-leverage labor for life, not because they don't have skills, but because they don't have permission, not from society, not from family, and worst of all, not from themselves. So I'll say this gently. You don't have to prove your worth by suffering. You don't have to bleed to deserve abundance. You don't have to stay broke to stay humble. Wealth isn't immoral. Leverage isn't greed. And ease is not the enemy, but you do need to unlearn the story. The one that says, I am only valuable when I'm in pain. Money must come from sweat and sacrifice. If I'm not struggling, I'm being lazy. No, that's poor people's programming. It served a different generation in a different time. It kept your grandparents alive. It kept your parents fed, but it will keep you stuck if you don't rewrite it. And that rewriting isn't easy. It takes awareness. It takes inner work. It takes courage, because you'll have to say no to the guilt that creeps in when you rest. You'll have to keep building even when your friends mock you for trying to be a boss. Even when your coworkers say you're getting too big for your boots. Even when your own mind whispers, who do you think you are? You'll have to answer that voice. And not with excuses, but with truth. I am someone who refuses to stay small. Someone who will not trade decades of life for scraps of approval. Someone who is building freedom, not just for myself, but for everyone who comes after me. That's what rich people's work really is. It's not just building systems. It's building self-worth. It's not just gaining leverage. It's letting go of the shame of not being a martyr anymore, because you're not here to die broke with a plaque that says, hard worker. You're here to build something that sets your children free. And if that means shifting your identity, then so be it. Now I know this part is the most invisible. No one sees it. No one applauds it. You don't get a certificate for overcoming your limiting beliefs. But without this shift, everything else crumbles, because you can't hold wealth with a poor person's mindset. It'll slip through your fingers. You'll sabotage it. You'll give it away, avoid it, destroy it. Anything to get back to what's familiar. So this is your real assignment. Not just to work smart, but to think differently. To break the mental chains that tell you suffering is holy and wealth is shameful. Because that's the final step. First, you realize you've been working poor people's jobs. Then, you learn what rich people's work looks like. Then, you start building systems. But finally, you become someone who can hold wealth without flinching. Someone who can receive money without guilt, without self-sabotage, without shrinking. That's the deep work, and it starts with one powerful truth. You are allowed to be free, not someday, not when you've suffered enough. Now. So when you sit down to build your product, or shoot your video, or make your first sale, don't carry the shame of being clever. Be proud of it. You're not cheating. You're graduating. You're not abandoning hard work. You're upgrading it. You're not taking shortcuts. You're carving a smarter path. That's what rich people's work is. And you're already on the journey. Just keep going. And don't look back. Let me tell you a story. A true one. There was a man who worked at the docks. strong hands, cracked skin. He was up every morning before the sun and came home long after it had set. His kids barely saw him awake. His wife barely saw him smile, but he was proud. Proud to work, proud to sweat, proud to say, "I'm providing." And in many ways he was. But when he died, he left no savings, no assets, no leverage. Just memories of hard work and a family forced to start over. Now I don't tell you this to dishonor him. Not at all. He was a good man, a loyal man. He did what he was taught to do. But here's the question, is that still enough today? Is working yourself into the ground just to survive still noble when there's a smarter way to thrive? Is repeating the same struggle, generation after generation, a virtue or a failure to evolve? See, the world has changed, and staying stuck in old models of labor is not a sign of loyalty, it's a missed opportunity. Because today, the new form of poverty isn't just a lack of money, it's a lack of leverage, a lack of ownership, a lack of vision. That man at the docks gave everything to his job, but he didn't own the dock, he didn't own the boats, he didn't even own his time. He sold his life to rent a paycheck. And now, decades later, his grandchildren scroll on phones he never imagined, with the tools to build empires from a bedroom. Yet still, some of them repeat his path. Not because they have to, but because they've inherited the belief that work must look painful to be real. And that is the real tragedy. Not that our grandparents worked hard, but that we learn to feel guilty when we don't. Let me be blunt with you now. You are not your grandfather. You are not your father. You were born in a different time. You have access to tools they never dreamed of. You have the internet. You have AI. You have global platforms. You have more leverage in your pocket than Rockefeller had in his empire. So tell me, why are you still thinking like a laborer? Why are you still trading your time for coins when you could be building a machine that pays you every day, whether you get out of bed or not? Why are you trying to be the best employee in a system that was never built to make you wealthy? You think the company will reward your loyalty? No, it'll replace you the second someone cheaper shows up. You think a raise will save you? Inflation will eat it alive. You think your hard work will speak for itself? It won't, because poor people's work is invisible. It's replaceable. It doesn't scale. And it dies with the worker. Rich people's work, it scales. It lives on. It pays after you stop working. It builds freedom, not just survival. And you don't have to be a genius to do it. You just have to shift. Shift from doing to designing, from reacting to creating, from following orders to building systems. That might mean starting small, creating a digital product, learning to sell a skill, partnering with someone who knows marketing, turning your knowledge into a course, building a brand that grows over time. It doesn't matter how you start. What matters is that you start, because every day you delay, you dig the hole deeper. Every month you stay in low leverage work. You borrow from your future. Every year you wait to act. You trade possibility for predictability. But you already know this. That's why you're still here, listening. Some part of you knows you were not born just to survive. You're not lazy. You're not incapable. You're just stuck in a system that never taught you to think differently. But now you've seen behind the curtain. You see how the wealthy think. You understand how they build. You recognize the lie of hard work, at least the kind that leads nowhere. So what will you do now? Will you stay comfortable and struggle? Or will you risk discomfort to build freedom? because the path is open. It's never been more open. But only for those who dare to step out of the labor trap and into the Creator's life. You don't need permission. You just need a decision. One that says, I will not spend the next 30 years repeating my father's exhaustion. I will not wear poverty like a badge of honor. I will build wealth, not just for me, but for everyone who comes after me. That is your inheritance, not struggle, but evolution. Not just survival, but legacy. So here we are, the final part of this conversation. But perhaps the beginning of a new one within you. You've come this far because you already sensed something was wrong. Not with you, but with the way the world taught you to work, to grind, to hustle, to wear exhaustion like a medal, to keep your head down, while others build the world above you. But let me ask you a question that very few ever do. What if you stopped working so hard and started working on the right thing? Because here's a truth that will either sting you or set you free. Hard work is not your problem. Direction is. You've been pouring effort into a leaking bucket, trying to fill it faster instead of fixing the hole. That hole, it's your mindset, your beliefs, your relationship with value, time, and wealth. Let's get very practical now, because I want you to walk away, not just awakened, but equipped. Here are 5 critical shifts you must make if you want to stop doing poor people's work and start building wealthy people's lives. 1. Shift from trading time gives to building assets. Poor people's work is time-bound. You work, you get paid. You stop working, it stops paying. Wealthy work builds assets, things that earn while you sleep. This could be a digital product, a YouTube channel, a licensing deal, a business system, an investment portfolio. Ask yourself every month, did I build anything that will pay me tomorrow? If not, you're still doing poor people's work. Point 2. Shift from being a worker gives to becoming a seller. You've been trained to do the task, to wait for instructions, to punch in, punch out. But the ones who rise, the ones who escape the paycheck prison, are the ones who sell their ideas, sell their knowledge, sell their vision, sell solutions. If you avoid sales, you avoid freedom. Start simple. Sell a service. Sell your writing. Sell someone else's product on commission. The key is this: every dollar you earn without a boss teaches you how to be free. 3. Shift from being useful gives to becoming valuable. There's a difference. The janitor is useful. So is the cashier. So is the truck driver. But the architect, the strategist, the investor, they are valuable. Why? Because value is not about effort. It's about impact and insight. The world pays for perspective, for results, for transformation. Learn to think, to see patterns, to solve problems that others can't. That is value, and value is wealth. 4. Shift from loyalty gives to leverage. Loyalty to a company used to mean something. Not anymore. You give them 20 years, they give you a plaque and a pink slip. You give them your best ideas, they use them to scale without you. So stop being loyal to systems that do not return the favor. Be loyal to your vision, to your family's future. Use your job to fund your dream, not to replace it. Your employer should be your first investor, not your final destination. 5. Shift from identity gives to evolution. This is the deepest one, because poor people often say, this is just who I am. I'm not that kind of person. I could never do that. But rich people say, I can. Learn that. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer. I wasn't born knowing this. but I will master it. You must give yourself permission to outgrow the person you've been. To let go of old labels, to abandon the pride of struggle, to evolve into someone your past self wouldn't recognize, but your future self would thank, because identity is not a prison. It's a doorway, but you must walk through. Now let me leave you with this. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. You don't have to prove your worth by how much you suffer. You don't have to stay small to make others comfortable. It's okay to want more. It's okay to outgrow your roots. It's okay to leave behind the kind of work that keeps your body moving but your spirit empty. Because this world doesn't need more tired workers. It needs more awake builders, more intentional creators, more people brave enough to break the cycle, to say, yes, I work hard, but not to stay poor, not to repeat history, not to trade my soul for scraps. I work hard to build leverage. I work hard to build freedom. I work hard so my children won't have to. That is noble. That is worthy. That is what wealthy work looks like. And now the only question that remains, will you start building it?